Hello everyone, this is Frances Chan. I'm very glad that from this episode onwards, I invite my good friend David to share with us a topic on insolvencies. He's very experienced in giving advice on this insolvency area. So David, thank you.
Thank you, Frances. So today we're going to talk about warning signs of financial distress and insolvency in companies. We looked at stress companies, distressed companies, insolvency, the legal test for insolvency, and we'll also talk a little bit about statutory demands.
Welcome to this YouTube channel of K-Leaders. I'm Frances Chan.
I'm David Wong.
David, please start your presentation.
When we're talking about the financial health of companies, it's best to think of them as being on a spectrum from very healthy on the one end to insolvent on the other.
Okay.
So when we talk about companies in financial stress, we mean that they're facing some financial pressure, but there are no immediate liquidity problems in terms of it being able to meet its obligations. On the other hand, as we move past stress and we talk about companies being in financial distress, that is when a company is at risk of being unable to meet its obligations. And then in insolvency, that is when a company is unable to meet its obligations.
David, I think quite a lot of companies is now in financial troubles. Is there any signs that you can share with us so that we can be alerted?
Yes, there are a lot of companies that are experiencing financial stress because of the situation now. And so some early warning signs, some possible early warning signs of companies in financial stress are things like if they've dishonored checks or failed payments, or if they've been taking a lot longer to pay bills than they normally would. So instead of 7 days or 14 days, they're going out to 60 or 90 days, or indeed if they're failing to pay their bills at all.
Oh.
Other signs could be increasing staff turnover or poor staff morale if you can't find the people you normally deal with at the company due to turnover. Otherwise, if they've been late in making their corporate filings, that can also be a sign of insolvency.
As company secretary, we should be alerted then.
Yes, that's right. So another sign is that other creditors might have already commenced legal proceedings for unpaid debts. So these are possible signs or possible indications that a company is under financial stress.
Okay.
And the last one, of course, is if there's a whole sector that they're operating in which might be under financial pressures, then it's likely that they are also under some kind of financial stress. So when we talk about insolvency, that means a company is unable to pay its debts. And the key thing to keep in mind here is that when a company enters the zone of insolvency, there's a change in the director's duties. They must keep in mind the obligations to creditors as a whole. In Hong Kong, most often, when a company goes into insolvency, it's as a result of a court winding up. And that's what we call a compulsory liquidation.
Okay.
A liquidator will be appointed. And what the liquidator does is he comes in and takes over control of the company from management. He brings in all the assets and he sells them in order to pay the creditors.
Okay.
And at the end of that whole process, the company is dissolved. So the company is brought to an end.
I see. So you talk about unable to pay. Is there any definition for that?
Thanks, Frances. Yes, there is. So like many common law jurisdictions around the world, Hong Kong doesn't actually define what insolvency is.
Okay.
Instead, the company's law provides some tests where a company will be deemed unable to pay its debts.
Okay.
And the first and foremost is if a company fails to meet a statutory demand, then it will be deemed to be unable to pay its debts.
Okay.
The second situation is where there's a failure to satisfy execution on judgment.
Okay.
That means someone has got a judgment against the company and it's been enforced.
Okay.
And then the enforcement has resulted in a situation where the proceeds have been unable to pay for the whole of that judgment debt. In that situation, a company is also deemed to be unable to pay its debts. The third situation is a catch-all where you can otherwise prove that a company is unable to pay its debts, taking into account its future liabilities. That's where a cash flow test or a balance sheet test or a combination of both might be used.
So statutory demand, I think there's a legal definition in your company in the ordinance, right?
Yes, that's right, Francis. So statutory demands in Hong Kong are a formal demand under the Companies Winding Up and Miscellaneous Provisions Ordinance for payment. In order to comply with the formalities for a statutory demand, it must be for a debt more than Hong Kong $10,000.
Okay.
It must set out certain information about the debt and how to pay, and must follow the form in the company's legislation. Importantly, once a statutory demand is served, the debtor has 3 weeks to comply.
Okay.
And the key takeaway here is that if you receive a statutory demand, do not ignore it.
Okay. So David, thank you for the sharing. So is there any key point that I should bring with me after this episode?
So I think the one key thing to remember from all of this is that when you notice signs of financial stress or distress, you must act early.
I see. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so this is the end of this episode. Next episode, David, what are your topic?
So next episode, we're going to talk about dealing with debtors. And that means what you can do when someone owes you money.
Oh, interesting. So thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching this video. If you like it, please give us a like and subscribe and share with your friends. Look forward to your continuous support. See you next time. Bye-bye.